we back?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Are we back?
Yeah, we're
I
back.
send messages. I have to work. Somebody has to work in this operation. Hey, I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from downtown Blue Ridge, shops at Sycamore Crossing. We are going to next week. We got some messages. Our stream was chopping up a little bit. We changed the stream key there. We're going to make a change for next week on actually the stream that we're using here. So we apologize that I got a message it was breaking up. I'm here with Dr. Whaley, Georgia cancer specialist. We're glad to have Dr. Whaley. I said, what exactly subjects? And you said you had, good morning, you said you had plenty, and I like that tie.
Yeah, well, I'm wearing it for that. I'm wearing that reason, for that exact reason. Yeah, you just said, I'm going to feed off of you a little bit. Nobody knew where Apello was. Until 2 days ago, nobody knew who John Tortorella was. John Tortorella has been famous for 2 days. You don't remember who John Tortorella is. John Tortorella is the coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets hockey team, coach of the American hockey team, and now in the World Cup. And yesterday he was all over the news saying that if any one of his players sat for the national anthem, they would sit for the entire game. Last week we were talking, how do you enforce among professional athletes standing for the national anthem? John Tortorella knows the hammer for hockey players.
I was thinking about you.
They die if they don't skate.
I was thinking about you when they said that. Yeah. When I seen that report this week, the first person I thought about was you, because he said blue line or bench. And what most people don't, if you don't know this on the on hockey you skate out to the blue line. This team skates out to their blue line, this team, and they line up on the blue line, and they don't move. Now,
for
they
both
might,
national anthems.
Yeah, and they might move like 5 seconds to go.
Yeah,
they'll turn, but they don't move. Stick goes down.
Stick goes down. Hats off. Helmets
Stick
off.
goes down.
Helmets off. And most of the time.
And he said blue line or bench.
Yeah, and I've known him, and if he walked in here, he'd say, "Oh, that's the doctor for somebody." He had Tampa Bay. They were in our division. He had two of the great players, Vinny LeCavier and Martin St. Louis. We had a chance to treat them during the All-Star break. But anyway, he's a fine man. He went to the Rangers and the Canucks, and now he's with the Columbus Blue Jackets. But he has a son on his third deployment to Iraq, and he's a gorgeous guy, big, muscular guy, but he doesn't mess around. And I've watched him bench a all-star for a whole period because he took a stupid penalty. Well, if you bench a professional athlete, that's the worst thing you can possibly do to him. That really is discipline. And so he's just told them in advance, guys, this is the World Cup, and you're going to stand for the national anthem, and if you sit down, you ain't playing, and I guarantee you there'll be no stuff. The second thing you said was, you heard me tell you weeks ago, don't worry about this, the Republicans are going to do that. The film crews are in Detroit getting pictures of the slums, and then they're going to go in there and meet with the minority leaders, and they're going to show those pictures, and they're going to say, this is the Democrat for 10 years now, you get a chance, vote for me, what can you possibly lose? Well, 6 weeks ago and 4 weeks ago on this program, I told you that they were going to come out with a recommendation that people who go to Miami Beach can't have sex for 6 months unless it's safe sex. There's not a chance in the world that anybody's going to do that. And lo and behold, Tuesday of this week, the World Health Organization came out with their recommendation that all travelers to Zika-related places refrain from having other than safe sex for 6 months.
You did do that the very first time we met.
That's right.
And the very first time we talked about Zika, I asked, what do you recommend? And exactly your recommendation right here in the little town of Blue Ridge, Georgia, on the internet, you said word for word what they came out and put out 2 days ago.
Okay, and I said,
to remind people what that is.
All right. This is even bigger than that. If you have traveled to Miami Beach now, not just inside Miami, or any area where the Zika virus is known to be, one, you cannot donate blood, and the World Health Organization now says, since this is a sexually transmitted disease, you should only have safe sex, meaning with a condom, for 6 months. if you have just traveled to that area. Now think how many cruise ships are leaving out of Miami Beach. I mean, that's tens of thousands of people every week. They're not going to do that. That virus is going to get out of there. Yesterday, the Olympic Committee said there were no cases of Zika virus transmission at the Olympics in the spectators or the athletes. Well, everybody said, man, that is really great. But remember, they didn't test anybody. When they found the Zika virus in the neighborhoods in Miami, they had to knock on the door. Remember that? Told you that?
Yes.
They had to say,
Yes,
will you let us take your saliva, your urine, or your blood? And 8 out of 10 people said, up yours. I'm not going to do that. Well, they didn't test those hundreds of thousands of people that went to the Olympics and went home. How many of them could have had a flu-like illness or nothing? Remember, 80% of the people don't have any illness at all, so they have no idea. They're just trying to put a lid on something that's going to get bigger and bigger. Also, yesterday, they've learned that this virus stays in the tears and in the eyes for longer than it stays in the body, meaning 6 months. They've always known that Ebola virus and other of these strange viruses live in the fluid of the eye for long periods of time. So you can't donate a cornea from somebody who has one of these illnesses, or you can transmit the disease to a corneal transplant.
Wow.
I remember I told you last week, I told you.
Yes, you did.
That organ transplantation is going to be badly hurt because of they won't be able to take organs, hearts, livers, kidneys from a motorcycle victim in Miami and fly it up to New York for somebody to get a liver or heart transplant, because that can be harboring the Zika virus.
It could be harboring. So
yes. But
it
now
may
the
not show up today. It could be harboring it. And so it just eliminates anything from that region of being approved.
That's correct. And now we know that it stays in the tears. Well, as soon as there was a Zika case from an adult male like you in a home with an older guy who was, well, like my age. His son, who was in his 50s, got the Zika virus, and nobody could figure out how. Dad had the disease from travel. Well, when they've learned now that it's in your tears for 6 months or longer after you've had it, they think the son got it from transmission from his dad's tears. Anyway, that's the end of that, talking about Zika virus. But well, I just wanted to say you heard it first on Fetch Your News.
You did exactly. That's what we discussed here the very first week. We discussed Zika several weeks ago. You're watching FYNTV.com, and we're coming to you live from downtown Blue Ridge, the shops of Sycamore Crossing. Beautiful morning here, September 9th. September's a beautiful time. We're getting ready for blues and barbecue in this town. We got a lot of things going on here in North Georgia. We'll talk about those later. This is brought to you by the Georgia Cancer Specialist, Dr. Whaley. Now, Congress, not to get political, not to switch over, but...
Oh, we need to get political. Go ahead.
No, I don't want to. Well, actually, let's go here. Congress is in the midst of discussing Zika virus funding. What do they need down there? What is the immediate need that we have of funding? Because I will tell you, I get shocked of I wish I could just go out and say I needed $100 million, so I'm not making light of the Zika virus. Where do they get the numbers they think they need for research that they start broadcasting all over TV?
You want to know the truth? I have no earthly idea. We've already told you that they're spraying you have several things. One, introduction of the virus. It takes money to get people to go out into vacant lots in people's backyard and turn over the pots and get all the water out of there. And cities don't have enough infrastructure to do that. So I can see them hiring people to go and do that sort of thing. The research on finding a vaccine and that sort of business, that requires significant funding. That generally would come through the National Institutes of Health, done by universities and done by the drug companies, that particularly in Switzerland where a lot of these big immunology companies are based, because they don't have to fool with American regulation. The American regulation holds these companies to such ridiculous I-dotting and T-crossing that they don't have the freedom to do what they need to do to make progress. So most of this progress is made overseas. I was going to talk about the flu vaccine just a minute, and this leads us into it.
Yes, please do.
All right. Flu season has started. CDC says that every American 6 months of age and older needs to be immunized against the flu. They're expecting a big epidemic this year.
Wait. Can I ask you a
Yeah,
question?
sure.
And it's important.
Let's
go to me.
ahead.
Let's
All
go
right.
to me. Never had the flu vaccine.
I've already told you that was dumb. Remember?
I've never had. I've never had the flu vaccine. This makes every year. Now I'm going to just say I'm out here. You're in the medical side of this. I'm out here every year, and they're telling me this is what the media is telling me. It's going to be a different strain like we've not seen before, and this and the vaccine, and we may be short on the vaccine. I've never had that. Am I making a mistake?
Yes.
But I am. I'm making a mistake by not getting the flu.
I think your car has an airbag and it has a shoulder harness
Okay.
that you've never needed.
Okay. All right.
And as soon as somebody whacks you, if you don't have the shoulder harness and you don't have the seat, the airbag, you're going to be really mad at yourself. Roughly 40,000 to 50,000 people a year die in this country because they had the flu. That's more people than die of HIV every year. The flu doesn't kill them. They get pneumonia after the flu, or they get meningitis from the flu. Now, the flu vaccine doesn't prevent you from getting all strains of flu, but it mitigates it if you get it, makes it less severe. There are 3 strains of flu in this year's flu vaccine, in most of it. And there's a standard dose that's for healthy people under the age of 50. There's a souped up dose for people over the age of 65. And then there's a high dose standard one for people over age 50 and under age 65. So they've got a different flu vaccine for everybody. Well, in the past, they talked about a nasal spray for kids.
Right.
Nasal spray's gone. They've figured out it doesn't work. So everybody that's 6 months or over that's not allergic to eggs should go and get their flu shot now, because the flu season starts generally the last week in September, the first week in October, and it takes 2 weeks for your antibodies to begin. So this is the time to go do it. People that have an egg allergy, they have one for them. It just doesn't come from eggs. So
If you
there's
have
really
an egg allergy.
yeah,
You need to be aware of that.
Yeah, the only people that wouldn't want to get the flu vaccine are people with a prior history of unstable Guillain-Barré syndrome, and that's that paralysis thing, and it's 1 in a million. And I've got 2 patients in my whole practice that have it. So just go get your flu shot. The people in our drugstores that have these immunization programs, they're well versed on what you ought to get, and pay the $10 or the $30. Don't get it from us. We charge too much. And these family practitioners, you can get it free up here, usually 3 Saturdays in a row. One of them at the bank is the drive-by
Right.
flu shots, and one of them the grocery stores and the
Absolutely.
drugstores are free ones, and then I don't remember who else, Lions Club or somebody. But you can even get one free if you watch out for it. So I just go get your flu shot.
Now, what are you hearing about the flu this year? The strain. I mean, what is
They've
what
done
is
a
being
real.
said?
Well, Dr. Marlowe. I have to keep coming every week. We talk about Dr. Marlowe. That's my resource. The CDC says that that there's an A, an A, and a B in the regular vaccine. There's an A, an A, a B, and a B in the quadrivalent vaccine. That costs a little more money, and they take that A and that A and that B, and they predict from what's going on around the world what strain they're gonna get. Now, there's only been about 4 times here in the last 20 years that hasn't been right. The Spanish flu, the Hong Kong flu. Those are episodes where in Hong Kong there was a new flu strain that year that went around the world. But they're getting it pretty close to right. And if they get close, then it'll mitigate the severity of the flu, even if you get the flu. Now, the real flu, not the blowing your nose flu, but the real flu is 7 to 10 days. Temperatures could go to 103, 104, 105, and you'd rather be dead. You feel like you were beat up with somebody with a 2x4. When somebody says, oh, I got the flu, and they had a stuffy nose for 2 days, that's not the flu. They've got the common cold. Real honest to goodness influenza can put you in the hospital. It's certainly going to put you down. And that's why when a flu epidemic hits a professional athletic team, it hit the Montreal Canadiens 3 years ago, they had to cancel games.
Yes.
And they had to activate a minor league team after they'd canceled 2 games. They activated about half of a minor league team, their minor league team, and brought them up and had to play with those guys for about 3 games.
Well, you know what?
It'll devastate a company.
The flu, I'm sorry, I like hockey. The flu stopped the Montreal Canadiens. They had to bring players up,
Yeah.
but it didn't stop Patrick Waugh. Not the flu. He had an appendectomy on a Friday and played goalie on Sunday. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
You remember?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's because they got the laparoscopic appendectomy nowadays.
You had to say hockey.
But let me go back. The reason that law firms and companies immunize everybody in their office is that if they get 10 or 15% absenteeism over a short period of time, it can throw a monkey wrench into their company. And so, you know, companies don't spend money that's not worth it. And when an employer's got 90,000 employees, a law office has got 50, or a medical office has got 20, and they insist that the people get immunized, they're doing that because it's a lot more cost effective to immunize them than to have them sick. We got plenty more time. I'm going to tell you about cost effective. You know, I always am talking about exercise. When I'm out of here next week, you're going to have a real good-looking female in my place, and she's an exerciser. People are always talking to me, my doctor's overweight and he smokes and he doesn't exercise a bit. On Monday of this week, a great clinical trial was published by the English that took 2 groups of people and followed them. One group didn't do any substantial exercise. They were totally normal people. The other group did exercise, not the equivalent of 5 hours of walking a week, like I said, but the equivalent of 2 to 3 hours of walking per week. It saved the healthcare costs of the group that exercised $2,500 a year. Now that's money, $2,500 a year. Now these are tens of thousands of people. How did it do that? It lowered the number of people that had diabetes. It lowered the number of people that had high blood pressure. It lowered the number of people that had cancer. It lowered the number of people who had severe complications of the influenza because they weren't overweight and they didn't have pneumonia. So exercise, the flu shot, all that stuff converts into money. People understand money.
Yes, they do. Absolutely. Dr. Whaley, we have a short period of time here. Just about 5 minutes. Did we miss anything today?
No, but you're going to that Trump thing. There's a breakfast the next morning that I'm invited to with Newt. I can't go, but they wanted me to put together a group of 10 doctors for 10 grand a piece to have breakfast with him. But I did a better job. I got a patient of mine from Dalton to get 10 guys to put 100 grand a piece together and get Trump to come to Dalton. We think that's gonna come off. But the guy that's raising the money for the Trump campaign in Georgia is Pete Petit, and Pete's a patient of mine, a longtime friend of mine. The School of Bioengineering at Georgia Tech is called the Pete Petit School of Bioengineering. He got into that as a dealer of medical equipment when he had a child die in the crib. And he was the guy that put together the technology for the prevention of the sudden infant death syndrome, and he's been quite successful in business. Pete and I were having a conversation last night that he does not believe that the country could recover ever from a Hillary Clinton presidency. I have said it would take the country 50 to 100 years. I said that on here a few weeks ago, that two Supreme Court justices would be awful. 3, 4, or 5 would be almost, you almost can't recover from that. And Pete is of the opinion, and he goes to Washington all the time. He has very good relationships with people that are in the Congress. And he believes that that the Republican members of the Congress and the Democratic members of the Congress have lost their way. And that we were talking about my friend Zell, who he left Washington because he thought he was getting his feet dirty but being up there, and Bill Frist, who thought he was getting his feet dirty. I think we have to have a revolution that has to begin with a new president. And that new president has to show leadership. And then that leadership has to translate into people like us electing people to go to Congress, because the president can't do it by himself. He can be tough, and he can tell Putin to go jump in the lake, and he can tell the guy in North Korea to go jump in the lake. But we've got to get a new Congress after we've got a new president.
Well, you said leader, and that is the version today that I'm hearing is the Vladimir Putin and a leader. But you lead, or you allow someone to lead?
Yeah, you lead or get out of the way.
You lead. If you're not leading, you're allowing someone else to lead.
That's right.
And that's what we've done as a country. We've allowed some bad people, some bad things to happen, but we have allowed people to lead, right?
Yeah. You got the Army says, lead or get out of the way.
Right.
The Marine Corps says, give me a few good men. All those concepts. We need those concepts. We need those concepts in the civilian life, not just in the military. We need people like you. We need people like these ones that are coming on here that really have a passion for what's right. And now we can disagree over Kaepernick, and we can disagree over this, but if we have got to believe that American people will rise to the occasion and will do the right thing, like the greatest generation. One of my favorite ones is Teddy Roosevelt. He built a bunch of white ships. He put those white ships in the ocean. He sent those white ships around the world, and he said to everybody in the world, Teddy Roosevelt, everybody in the world, America's here, don't muck with us. We're going to talk softly, we're going to carry a big stick. Well, we haven't carried a big stick since Reagan got out of the White House. We got to have somebody go back, and you remember the day Reagan was elected, they let all those hostages go in Iran. I'm going to tell you.
There's only a few times where I stay quiet.
I'm going to tell you.
Exactly.
I'm going to tell you the morning about midnight on election day, I'm going to be in China, and if Trump is elected, I guarantee you that the Chinese. That island you're talking about was an undersea mount, they call it.
Yeah.
It was about 40 feet below the surface of the
Absolutely.
ocean. I've been diving on those in the Sea of Cortez, and they just piled dirt on it until they had a sea thing there. That's a little bit like Iwo Jima. We had to have Iwo Jima to have a place for our bombers to land, as they were damaged over Japan. It's just a little hunk of rock in. To have Iwo Jima, we were going to have a bad time with the war. Well, they have built themselves an Iwo Jima. That's exactly what they did. They built an island that's a little bit longer than Iwo Jima, and it's not as wide as Iwo Jima, but they built it for one purpose, and that was to put runways on it. And it now has runways down there big enough to land a C-5 on. And then on the back side of it, they've got a place where they can put submarines and ships. Now, if you're going to talk to me about a resort, anyway, I'm going to be in China, and the morning after he gets elected, I want to see what they got in the papers in China.
Well, then you won't be here for the the Muscadine wine. Because we have a bottle of Muscadine wine on FYNTV.com the morning after the election. I'm the bartender, and we're breaking over the Muscadine. You have to have Muscadine wine in Georgia. Dr. Whaley,
put that on the windshield you knocked over there.
Hey, I'm your host, BKP. Good morning. Good morning from beautiful downtown Blue Ridge. And you know what? Every time Dr. Whaley comes on, it makes me just a little nervous because I may have to end the segment and say I've got to follow doctor's orders. So the doctor says this morning I have to get a flu shot.
Right.
So that's what he says. It's time for your flu shot, and there's plenty of places. We'll put those up on PetcherNews.com. And we've been here with Dr. Whaley from the Georgia Cancer Specialist. I'm your host, BKP. We're going to take a brief break. When we come back, we're going to get a couple people in here to talk a little politics. Who would have guessed it? We'll be back after this.